The clinic waiting room smelled like antiseptic and stale coffee. Plastic chairs lined the walls, a daytime talk show muttering on the mounted TV no one was watching. I sat there staring at Eli, my boyfriend of 3 years, as he gripped a sealed envelope in his hands like it was a live grenade. Inside that envelope was a paternity test, proof on paper. And the sick part was, I already knew what it would say. The baby was his. I never doubted it for a second, but I could see it in his face, the way his knuckles whitened, the way his leg bounced. Whatever was written inside those pages, it wasn't going to save us. It was going to break us, freeze that moment. That's where everything unraveled. But to understand how we got there, you have to go back. Eli wasn't perfect. Neither was I. Our love was messy, loud fights that ended with tears, slammed doors followed by whispered apologies. But it was real. And through it all, I thought we were building something solid. We talked about apartments, then houses, vacations, then kids. I believed we were laying down the foundation of a family, even if it was rough around the edges. When I found out I was pregnant, my world shifted. I remember the look on Eli's face when I told him. Shock first, then something softer. His arms wrapped around me, his voice breaking as he said, "We'll figure this out. We'll do it together." For the first time, I felt like we were a team. Like whatever storms we'd weathered before had just been practice for this. That should have been our beginning. But one test destroyed everything. The cracks didn't come all at once. They started small, disguised as questions that sounded innocent until you heard the weight beneath them. One night after dinner, Eli leaned back in his chair, swirling the last sip of his beer. "You're sure about the dates, right?" he asked lightly, eyes fixed on the bottle instead of me. I laughed nervously. "Of course I'm sure." But my stomach clenched. Another time, when we were folding laundry, he hesitated before tossing me a shirt. "You haven't been with anyone else, have you?" His tone was joking, but his eyes weren't. Each question was a pinprick, tiny on its own, but together they bled me dry. Then came the whispers. I woke up one night to the sound of his voice muffled in the kitchen. I crept down the hall and froze when I heard his mother's sharp tone through the phone speaker. She never liked me, always polite in person, but cold underneath. "Eli, you need to be careful. Girls lie about these things. You don't want to be trapped." My chest tightened, tears burning in my eyes. And then his voice, low but firm. "I'm getting it checked, Mom. Don't worry. Getting it checked, as if my body, my word, wasn't enough." I stumbled back to bed before he caught me listening, lying there in the dark, my heart pounding like I'd been caught doing something wrong. That was the cruelest part. I felt guilty without knowing why. Like I was already on trial in my own relationship, every move scrutinized, every truth doubted. I told him over and over, "The baby is yours. I wouldn't lie about this." He'd nod, kiss my forehead, and say he believed me. But the shadow in his eyes told me otherwise. The seed was planted, and no matter how much I tried to smother it with reassurance, it was growing. And with it, so was the distance between us. It was Eli who said the words out loud, words that cut deeper than any fight we'd ever had. "I want a paternity test." I blinked at him, the ultrasound photo still warm in my hand. "The baby isn't even born yet." "There are ways," he said, avoiding my eyes. His voice was calm, clinical, like we were talking about car insurance instead of our child. "I just need to be sure." Something inside me snapped. "Be sure. Eli, I've told you 100 times. This is your baby. Why isn't my word enough?" He ran a hand through his hair, frustration flickering. "Because people lie, Naomi. Maybe not you, maybe not this time, but I need proof." Proof. As if the sleepless nights, the morning sickness, the dreams we'd built weren't proof enough. I felt humiliated, stripped bare, like I was on trial for a crime I hadn't committed. But beneath the anger was fear, that if I said no, if I refused, his doubts would only grow into something worse. So I agreed. The weeks that followed felt like walking through fire. Every glance from him felt heavy, loaded, like he was waiting for the mask to slip, waiting for me to prove him right. I told myself that once the results came in, once he saw it in black and white, everything would go back to how it was. When the envelope finally arrived, we sat together in that sterile clinic, my hands shaking, his jaw set. He tore it open, scanned the lines, and exhaled. "It's mine," he said flatly. I waited for the smile, the relief, the arms around me. It never came. Instead, he folded the paper neatly, slipped it back into the envelope, and muttered, "At least now I know." At least now I know. My chest caved. "Eli, why wasn't my word enough?" He didn't look at me. "Because science doesn't lie." And in that moment, I realized it wasn't the result that broke us. It wasn't about the baby at all. It was about the truth the test had revealed. He didn't trust me, not then, not ever. And no piece of paper could fix that. After the test, everything changed. Not in the way I'd hoped, not with relief or closeness, but with silence. Eli moved through the apartment like a tenant instead of my partner. He ate dinner with his phone propped up, half listening when I talked. He slept facing the wall. His touch vanished. His laughter, too. I thought the paternity result would erase the doubt, but instead, it erased us. The worst part wasn't his distance, it was the whispers. His mother called more often, her voice carrying through the thin walls when he thought I wasn't listening. "At least you were smart enough to check," she'd say. "You never really know with women like her." Women like her. Those words stuck to my skin like tar. I'd walk past mirrors, catching my reflection, and wonder what she saw. A liar? A trap? A woman unworthy of trust? Sometimes I caught Eli staring at me, not with love but calculation, like he was still measuring me against some invisible scale I could never tip in my favor. Even pregnant with his child, I felt erased, like a stranger carrying a burden he didn't want to claim. I started questioning myself. Why wasn't my word enough? Why hadn't love been enough? Did I do something to deserve his suspicion? But beneath the shame, something darker grew. Anger. If he could look me in the eye after years together and still doubt the most sacred truth I had, what else was he capable of hiding? What secrets was he burying behind that calm smile and folded papers? Every time his phone lit up at night, every time he came home late, that question gnawed at me. Maybe the test hadn't cleared anything. Maybe it had only exposed the truth neither of us wanted to face. Trust wasn't broken. It had never been there at all. The test should have been the end of his doubts. Instead, it became the beginning of mine. Eli's phone never left his hand. He guarded it like a second heartbeat, slipping it into his pocket even to walk across the room. Late nights multiplied. "Work," he said. "Deadlines." His voice was too calm, too rehearsed. One night, while he showered, his phone buzzed on the counter. My hand shook as I picked it up. The screen lit with a message. "I miss you. When can I see you again?" My stomach dropped. I scrolled. Dozens of messages, some dating back months. Photos, plans. His lies laid out in black and white. It wasn't just now. He had been cheating long before the pregnancy. The paternity test wasn't about me. It was about him. He'd projected his guilt onto me, demanding proof of loyalty while hiding his own betrayal. He wasn't protecting himself from a lie. He was covering his tracks with one. When he stepped out of the shower, towel around his waist, I was waiting with the phone in my hand. "Who is she?" My voice shook, but my eyes didn't leave his. His face flickered, shock, then irritation. "Naomi, put my phone down." "Who is she, Eli?" I pressed. "Or should I ask how many?" He snatched the phone, jaw tight. "You're invading my privacy. You twist everything into drama. Maybe if you weren't so obsessed with accusing me—" I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Obsessed? You were in someone else's bed while I was carrying your child." For a second, he didn't speak. Then he muttered, "You're not perfect either." That line broke something in me. Even now, caught red-handed, he tried to turn it back on me, tried to make me carry the shame that was his alone. But this time, I didn't crumble, because the truth was finally in my hands, and there was no test in the world that could save him from it. When our daughter was born, I thought maybe things would change. I thought the sight of her tiny fingers curling around his would melt the ice between us. But Eli barely looked at her. He held her awkwardly as if she were made of glass and handed her back too quickly. His smiles were shallow, his words forced. "She's cute. She looks healthy." Fatherhood wasn't joy for him. It was a chore. Weeks passed, and instead of growing closer, he pulled further away. Nights when she cried, he stayed in bed, pretending to sleep. Doctor's appointments? I'm busy. Even when he was home, he hovered at the edges, detached, like he was just waiting for a chance to leave. Then came the final betrayal. I found out by accident, a letter from a lawyer tucked into the pile of mail. My hands shook as I tore it open. Words leapt off the page like fire. Petition for custody. I couldn't breathe. He'd filed behind my back. He planned to use my so-called untrustworthiness as his weapon, twisting the same doubts he'd planted months before. Despite the DNA proving she was his, despite everything, he wanted to paint me as unstable, unfit, unworthy. It wasn't about love anymore. It wasn't even about the baby. It was about control. The man who once kissed my belly and whispered about our future had turned me into an enemy in his game. And this time, no test, no truth, no evidence would ever change what he'd revealed. He didn't just doubt me. He wanted to destroy me. I didn't confront him right away. I sat with that letter for 3 nights, barely sleeping. My daughter pressed against my chest as if holding her close would keep the world from caving in. I studied her face, her soft cheeks, her tiny lips, the way she clung to me even in her dreams. And I realized something that changed everything. She needed me steady, not broken, not at war with a man who saw her as leverage instead of love. So I made my choice. I left. I packed up what I could fit into my car, her clothes, her blankets, the photo albums I refused to leave behind, and I drove away from the apartment that had once been our home. I didn't tell Eli. I didn't owe him the courtesy. For a while, it was terrifying. Sleepless nights alone, juggling feedings with bills, staring at the ceiling and wondering how I'd ever make it through. But slowly, the air felt lighter without him. My daughter's laughter filled the silence he left behind. And I realized the peace of not having his shadow in my life was worth every ounce of struggle. People ask me why I left the man who, on paper, was her father. And I tell them the truth. The test didn't reveal who the father was. It revealed who Eli really was. Because a father isn't defined by DNA. A father is defined by presence, by love, by the quiet sacrifices no one sees. And Eli failed every one of those tests. The paternity results proved he was her biological father, but his actions, his suspicion, his cruelty, his betrayal proved he was never truly mine, and he would never truly be hers in the way that mattered. He thought the paper would save him. Instead, it destroyed us. And in a way, it saved me. Because without it, I might have kept believing his lies, kept twisting myself into knots to prove I was worthy of his trust. The test forced me to see what was always there, a man who didn't love me enough to believe me, who didn't respect me enough to stand beside me, who didn't value me enough to stay faithful. So yes, the test proved the baby was his, but his reaction proved he was never mine. Some truths save you, others destroy you. This one did both.